Hey, hello, and welcome back. I am Lori Andrus, and today we are kicking off a new series, and we're going to be diving into your questions about working with crystals and stones. Yes, all the things that you've been curious about, this is where we're going. This series has been developed by the questions that you have shared with me, things that you've left in comments or sent me messages about, things that you want to know about working with crystals and stones. And if this episode prompts a question for you or a curiosity, I want to invite you to drop that in the show notes, and I'll make sure to work that into upcoming episodes. All right, so let's dive in. Today, we're going to talk about how to begin developing or building your crystal collection. This question came from an individual who has been building a collection with her daughter, and it's really, she identifies it as her daughter's crystal collection. And her daughter is heading off to college and going to be taking her crystals and stones with her. And she was realizing, hey, I want some of my own. How do I get started? What are some tips you can offer? So we're going to dive into that today. All right, the first thing I really want to talk about with this topic is that our crystal collections often begin organically, and they kind of surprise us. We don't necessarily recognize that we're beginning a collection until we suddenly do. Or at least that was the case for me. I know that as a little girl, I collected stones on the beach as I, walked the shores of Lake Michigan. And I know that in college, I found a ring that just moved me so deeply. It was a simple moonstone ring. It was gorgeous. And I fell in love with it. And that began a collection of moonstone jewelry and a love for moonstone. I really opened up my heart through that process. And it took a little time for me to have an awareness that something deeper was happening. I always thought it was kind of just this special thing, this like unique, special thing. And I didn't think a whole lot about it. I know that along the way, I had little stories that I thought were pretty cool and felt significant to me, but I never imagined that there was something bigger going on until one day I walked into the local bead shop, and on the wall, she had this amazing selection of gemstone beads. And as I glanced at the wall of gemstone beads, immediately jumped out a strand of rose quartz. And these were big, chunky pieces. Now, if you've listened to my podcast or been following me for a bit, you probably have heard me talk about this big, chunky piece of rose quartz and this necklace that I created with this strand and that I wore all the time. It is the strand that kicked off my jewelry design business. It's what prompted me to start creating pieces of jewelry. And it also kicked off a deeper dive into my love for self-development and connecting on a deeper level spiritually. Last night, it's funny that we're talking about this because last night I ran into an old colleague and she reminded me of a workshop that we as occupational therapists all got together and went to down in Milwaukee. And this workshop was on acupressure and how to integrate that into our practice. And while we were down there, we went and shopped at the Milwaukee Museum store. And while we were in the store, I found these funky pieces, these funky necklaces, and I just fell in love with it. And she just looked at me and she said, "That's when you knew you wanted to make jewelry. And not just make it for myself, but make it for other people." And I was really surprised to hear that from her. And I know she was right on that. And because that day was really significant and very similar to the pieces I had picked up that day was the rose quartz necklace that I wore all the time. And it was like they were I felt like there was this moment of validity for something I had created, because here it was in this gorgeous shop, and really regal. And they were different stones, but a similar design. And I also felt like it just was confirming of what I knew internally. So I guess I kind of wound around there to get to this place. But I feel like, for me, the awareness of working with crystals and stones really came through jewelry. And as I talk in this conversation today, and I share, different suggestions around how to build your collection, know that it's probably already begun in your world if you're completely new to this. But my sense is that most of you listening have already got a good collection started, and that you're kind of looking for how to like really embrace that a little bit deeper. So we'll talk about those kinds of things, how to really sink into the collection that you have. And I really want to emphasize that when we step into working with the crystals and stones, one of the pieces that's important is to begin to let ourselves work with the stones that we have. So often, there's a big difference between collecting stones as showpieces or like home decor, and collecting crystals and stones as pieces that have energetic significance, that are here to support us with our intentions and goals and dreams for our world. And how we work with them is a little bit different. Now, my personal collection has stones and crystals that feed both of those pieces. I have pieces that I feel are kind of statement pieces, but they also hold a task or a job or a role of energetically anchoring or grounding energy, or holding a vision, or stabilizing the rest of the crystals that I have in my collection. So we'll talk a little bit more about this kind of dance between showpieces and how to work with them once you're starting to grow your collection. All right, so the first piece that I really want to talk about is trusting your intuition. Take a deep breath with this one. I feel like so often this is one of the places where we get stuck, isn't it? I don't know about you, but for me, especially early on when I was starting to collect crystals and stones, the idea of trusting my intuition felt a little bit a little foreign, and I had a little hesitation around whether or not I was picking the right stones and stuff like that. But let me tell you, your intuition is not going to steer you wrong, especially when it comes to working with the crystals and stones. It is going to guide you. And your intuition is comprised of all of your senses. Now, for some of you, you may already know this, but for others of you, this may be new information. So I'm just going to quickly drop into this idea of your intuition being expressed through all of your senses. Your sense of smell, your sense of taste, touch, hearing, seeing in your mind's eye, feeling your emotions, and simply knowing. Each of your senses guide you intuitively. They support you in making decisions that are in alignment for you. Now, I think when we start collecting stones, we aren't always real tapped into our intentions and our goals and our dreams and the specific reasons we're looking for a crystal or stone. But that is really a great place to start, to tap into what is happening in our lives, what's working, what's not working, where do we want a little support. Sometimes that can be around a specific area of our health and well-being, could be regarding our career, our education, our sense of emotional well-being, our relationships, whether it's with our family members or seeking a loved one, or within an intimate partnership. All of those areas are different areas that we can look at. And when we tap in and we go, okay, I'm finding myself challenged in my primary relationship, I want support with that. Ah, okay. That's a focus. That's a desire and intention. And when we drop into that clarity and we say, okay, show me a stone show me a stone that is going to support me with this. Now, when I use that phrase, you may be feeling like, hey, I'm going to walk into a shop and I'm going to ask the shop owner to show me a stone that will help me with my primary relationship. But I actually really want to invite you to just ground into that idea of calling forward a stone that's going to support you in whatever your intention is. And once you've got that like anchored within you, then the trusting intuition becomes easier because the stones will call to us. They'll get our attention. Very often, I've heard things from people like, oh my goodness, your stones are so chatty. Oh my goodness, this one's talking to me. Or things like, I walked in and this piece of jewelry just lit up. When people use those phrases, they're speaking of their intuition, knowing that something is getting their attention. Intuitively, the stones are getting their attention. So think about how you tap into information. However that is, each of us have our own ways that are really natural, and then we have other ways that kind of just, weave in. Sometimes I just flat out know. I know what combinations of stones want to come together. I know what feels really great when I hold it in my hand. I know how my body responds when I put on a brand new piece of jewelry that I've created to match an intention. I know that sometimes I'll walk into a booth at an event and see, a ton of crystals, and most of them will feel dull. Like my mind, they won't light up for me. But the one or two or, a handful of stones on a display that are meant to work with me or work with the people that I serve, they light up. There's an energy that emerges that's kind of emitted, and it's almost like a billboard sign that jumps out to me, or I feel my energy just called over to a particular area. These are some of the phrases that will be used, right? My energy was just called there. It lit up for me. I heard it singing. My eyes couldn't move away from it. When I picked it up, I just couldn't put it down. That is your intuition. That is your inner guidance telling you this is a ping of connection. Ping of connection. Feeling goosebumps or chills through your entire body. Those are your intuition. So learning to trust that, I think selecting crystals and stones is a great way to start developing a relationship with your intuition. Okay, so now that we talked about intuition, and I kind of tapped in on the next point, which is around setting an intention and having things in alignment. I think setting an intention is such an important piece, and intentions don't need to be real specific. They can be pretty open and vague. And they can also be really specific. You can have a specific aspect of your health that you're working on. Maybe it's around dietary changes that you're making. Maybe it's around exercise and well-being. Maybe you've had a diagnosis that you're looking for support with. Now, very often we can feel inclined to jump to a book and get the list of stones that are great allies for whatever our desire is. And I think that's a really great way to tap in and kind of get started. But very often, one of the things that shows up when we're working with an intention is that the direct door isn't always our right answer. Sometimes we need to come in through a side door. So an adjacent stone may get your attention for supporting you in preparing you to really come through the front door. Does that make sense? I'd love to know if you've had experiences where you've had a specific goal and you found yourself, picking up a stone that didn't really make sense for what you wanted, but it helped you achieve that goal. Drop it in the notes. I would love to hear it in the comments what you've experienced. I know for myself, this is something that shows up very often. I feel like there's little ways that happens. When I go back to that strand of rose quartz in my logical mind at that time in my life, it's not at all something I would have selected. The stones were huge. It was way bigger than the jewelry that I wore. The color is not something that I loved on my skin. I had all these kind of rules and thoughts of what things were. And I never really questioned whether or not I had a healthy relationship with myself and with love for myself. But let me tell you, as soon as I started wearing that necklace, I had experiences where I really, truly learned to fall in love with myself. And in the process, I learned to say yes to what made me feel alive. And, that story I told you about shopping at the Milwaukee Museum store and finding those pieces that just confirmed to me that, yes, I want to create jewelry for other people. That I feel like the rose quartz necklace took me into an experience, that sort of experience. It opened the door for me to find what lit up my heart, what made me feel alive, and recognizing how I can use my gifts and abilities in the world in a way that feels meaningful to me. Now, I think that when we come in with intentions and focus our energy around the shifts and changes we're longing to make, or the ways we long to experience our world differently, we open a space for our best allies to show up for us. Yeah. We open space for our best allies to show up for us. And I want to really encourage you to trust your intuition and lean into the books after you've trusted your intuition. Let them affirm and confirm what you know internally. Let them validate what is already coming forward. All right. So the fourth point I want to dive into here is around less is more. I know you can look in this, and if you're watching the video, you can see behind me there are just tons of crystals and stones on my shelves, and in my home, if you walked in, you'd be like, whoa, Lori, you have a lot here. That said, I know that my collection and my connection with the crystals and stones built very slowly. It built through a couple different ways, through the jewelry that I was creating and through gifts of stones from other people, and then stones that I found on trails and on the beach and while I was hiking and out in nature. I think those are some of the best ways to really begin our collections, to just start simple. Let yourself receive gifts of stones and crystals from other people and enjoy them. Get to know them. And when you find a stone that calls to you, give yourself permission to receive it. Make an offering to the earth, thank the earth, and receive the stone. And don't be shy around wearing the pieces that come to you as well. I think this has been such an important piece of my journey. I don't think I know. And you probably know this too, because jewelry and creating sacred talismans and adornments that create transformation has been a pivotal part of my personal journey and the work that I share in the world. All right. So less is more. Let yourself start small. Don't overwhelm yourself. Don't overload. I remember years ago hearing people talk about, working with many, many crystals or stones at one time. Keep it simple. Just keep it simple. Start with one. Get to know that stone. This is the next point, the fifth point here. Get to know each of your stones. Forge an intimate relationship with them. Yeah, I'd love to know if you've taken time to get to know some of your crystals and stones. I'd love to hear some of your stories in the comments. So go ahead and share some of those. I think this is where the juice happens, where the magic happens. You can hear in this conversation, I keep referring back to that rose quartz necklace. That rose quartz necklace, oh my goodness, it taught me so much about love, so much about giving myself permission to love love the gifts and talents that I have and to utilize them in their most magnificent ways, to find courage and inner strength to move forward. Oh gosh, many, many layers. When I think about that necklace, I have such a fond recall. I have a fond recall for rose quartz. I have a fond recall for that necklace itself. And this type of relationship is what I really long for you. I long for you to have these fond, intimate connections with your crystals and stones and know how they support you. Each one has a different vibe. Okay, so when we talk about, books and resources and stuff like that, and I'm going to speak specifically from the Stone Speak Oracle because that's something I've created, and I can give you kind of this back insight on how that was formed and what has come forward in that process, and how the messages in that are really coming specifically through me. They're coming through the relationship that I forged with each of those stones. Each stone that is featured in that deck is something I painted from my own collection. It is an actual stone that I possess and I have a relationship with, and it had a message to share around really connecting with self and creativity and finding the courage and strength within self to trust our intuition and trust our inner wisdom, our gifts and talents, and how they want to be shared in the world. Now, each of those stones has a really deep connection, and it reflects what wants to be expressed into the world through that deck. Yeah, through that deck. Now, you may find that you pick up any one of those stones that's featured in the deck, and it has something different and deeper and another place that it wants to take you. Yeah. So when you're working with the deck, so for those of you who have the deck, thank you. If you want one, you can get one on my website. But if you have the deck and you find that there's a particular stone that just keeps showing up for you over and over and over, and you keep looking like, oh my goodness, it's here again. What is this stone really wanting to tell me? Well, my sense is that the message that is shared in the book is taking you in. It's like opening the doorway, and that working with that stone specifically, whether you carry it in your pocket, whether you keep it on your altar and meditate with it, or whether you wear it in a piece of jewelry, it is going to take you on a deeper journey of whatever's unfolding in your world. So I really encourage you to open that door further and step in with really working with one in hand. Get it in hand and get to know it. What does it want to share with you? Because what it wants to share with you is most definitely going to go infinitely beyond what I have written in my book. My book and my deck can only share so much. And the same is true about, in my opinion, the same is true for any author, any deck creator, anyone who is working with the crystals and stones. There is so much that can be shared. And then there is a unique way that each crystal and stone synchronizes and works with an individual. And so when we work with stones, there's a bond. So we can look at all the rose quartzes that are, out in the world, and my goodness, that's abundant, right? But then the one piece that calls to you, that you pick up, that you hold, that you carry, it has a unique vibration that matches what you're needing. I know, now we're getting kind of weird, but but this is where it gets really fun. And this is where, in my opinion, the magic really starts happening. And this is where having a trust in our intuition, which is beyond what we can see and know and have always physically validated. When I've talked about having things validated a couple times, and I think very often when we lean into trusting our intuition, the validation is not always immediate. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer for things to play out and for the answers to really emerge, for the deeper insights to show up, and for us to really recognize what's there, what the juicy thing is around all of that. And giving yourself permission and space to trust and also trust that the validation will be there at some point. It absolutely will. I feel like it always does show up. I feel like this is one of those things that eventually just emerges. All right, so the next piece on my list here is about learning through experience. My goodness, I think we just talked about that a lot. Learn through experience. As you're working with your crystals and stones, you're going to learn about them through experiencing. What are some of the unique things that unfold? Where do they take you on adventures? What unusual encounters do you have while wearing them? For example, last night, I was wearing the earrings that I have on right now, and there was a conversation around them that just, oh gosh, it was incredibly validating about what comes through in my work. And this was just an organic conversation, but it reflected something that was really significant to me. And I think, when you pay attention, the stones will take you on journeys. They're going to take you deeper into conversations. They're going to be connection points for conversations and like-minded thinkers and so many surprises. Let's talk about what do you do once you get your crystals and stones. Once you've made a new selection and you've brought one home with you. Well, in my opinion, I think it's a really great idea to do a little bit of a cleansing and clearing. By the time a stone or a piece of jewelry or a crystal gets in your hand, it has probably touched many, many different places, many different people, and it has accumulated lots and lots of different energy. Now, just giving them a little love, laying them on a windowsill, running a little bit of candlelight around them, smudging them with a smudge, spraying them with a little incense, laying them upon the earth or in the soil of a plant or a plant in your house. Those can be really simple and easy ways to do a little bit of clearing and to refresh the energy of the stones. It's a great, great next step. Okay, the last piece that I want to talk about is to be open to surprises. When I started collecting stones, it really was unconscious and it was kind of an organic thing. In college, I picked up a ring that I just loved. It was moonstone. When I went to Hawaii for one of my clinicals, I purchased a moonstone pendant and I wore it nonstop. It was like, it felt like, it just felt so soothing to me. And then after that, I started collecting labradorite rings. Every time I traveled, I picked up a labradorite ring. Well, at the time, I thought they were just touchstones from my travels or touchstones from experiences that I was having that were significant. Time in Hawaii, that was really significant. 3 months there, really immersed in the culture, immersed in the work that I was doing in the world, and immersed in a different ecosystem. So much about that was incredible. And to me, moonstone initially was a touchstone from that experience. But the thing is, it was actually inviting me into a different rhythm in life. And over time, I began to understand that. So let yourself, look back Be delighted and surprised by the ways that stones show up and actually mark particular transitions, changes, life events, the ways that they symbolize something that you're going through or moving through. And that is part of the wisdom and the messages and the ways that they want to work with you. And that, I think, is really incredible. It has a lot of insight and power. They will leave you surprises all along the way. Be delighted. Have fun with it. So I have just shared a whole bunch of ideas about getting your collection started. If you have some things you want to drop into the comments about how you found yourself starting your collection, let me know. I'd love to hear. And if you have questions or curiosities about working with the crystals and stones, drop those in the comments as well. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to like and subscribe and share with your friends who you know would love a little crystal insight. And if you're ready to go deeper, head on over to my website. I have a 5-day journey to support you in getting to know the stones that you have in your collection. And I spoke a little bit about the Stones Speak Oracle. If you'd like to pick that up, you'll find that over on my website as well. All right, sacred friend, I wish you an absolutely beautiful day, and I will see you again soon. Shine brightly.